I call your name, every fear is banished from here. When you call my name, I'll come running, running to you. And you say, come to me. Spread your wings, catch the wind, he's carrying you.
Shalom, and welcome to this live and interactive Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK Zoom event. And after all, we are the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, United Kingdom, bringing you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people through the pro-Israel ministry that is ICEJ UK. And in this month's edition of Jerusalem Dispatch, we'll be reflecting upon the Israeli elections, in which is another triumphant return of Benjamin Netanyahu to the center of Israeli politics. Tonight we have a very special guest from Israel. His name is David Mencer, and he works for Honest Reporting. He was also a former director of Labour Friends of Israel. He's got huge amounts of parliamentary experience in British politics, but also has a wonderful insight into Israeli elections, having made Aliyah to Israel recently, and has done so much in terms of developing stronger diplomatic and political ties between Britain and the State of Israel. I'm just going to introduce you to my joint host for the evening. Well, it's actually a pleasure to have Mark Starbuck joining us, who is the Chaplin Feast from the Feast of Tabernacles. Mark, it's great that you can join us tonight, and to our viewers watching, we are live and interactive. So if you have a question that you want to ask David, you'll have an opportunity towards the end of this program. But Mark, handing over to you, can you just share with us a little bit about your exciting experience of being back in Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles and being the Feast Chaplin, what that experience was like, and also some of the important events we've got for ICJ UK coming up for this month?
Right. Well, Simon, lovely to be with you, and David, so nice to be able to share this hour with you. And yeah, we had a feast. What a marvelous thing after the 2 years of COVID and having to stay home and having to do feast online. We were able to go and do a live feast. And so that was phenomenal. Now, in terms of ICEJ ministry, there's quite a lot going on. At the moment, we are dealing with what is being called a surge of Aliyah. And so a lot of the sort of previous Soviet Union, former Soviet Union countries, there's a surge of Jewish folk who are making Aliyah, returning to Israel. And ICJ is busy partnering with the Jewish Agency and with other ministries to help facilitate that and to get these returning Jews back to their land. Of course, a lot of this is due to the ongoing war in the Ukraine, and that is no doubt contributing to this current surge. Now, you mentioned, Simon, that here in the UK, we are busy getting ready for the Isaiah 19 prayer conference, and that is with Tom Craig, and that will take place on the 26th of this month of November at the Sedgley Community Church. Now, more details are available on the UK website, but they may also be flashed up here somewhere in the Zoom screen, and we would love you to come and be part of that. Now, the sort of event is subtitled "The Blessing for Egypt, Assyria, and Israel." And Tom is going to talk about one of the great miracles that's taking place in the Middle East today, how God is bringing nations together in faith and in partnership. Now, in addition to that, the UK branch is also providing more bomb shelters. So at this very moment, we're busy facilitating the purchase of more bomb shelters. We're also helping immigrant families with welcome packages and little, sort of packs of materials and clothing and things. I'm not exactly sure of what goes into these packs, but we're buying a number of them just to help some of these families. And of course, we're also involved with a number of other social projects in Israel. Now, in Jerusalem, at the headquarters, they are getting ready for our next annual event, which is Envision, which is a Christian leaders conference. And that is going to take place on the 30th of January to the 2nd of February next year. This is a fantastic event for Christian leaders who want to experience firsthand what God is doing in Israel today. And of course, you can contact Joanne at our office for more information about that. So there you are, Simon, just a little bit of what we're busy doing at the moment in ICEJ.
Excellent. Sounds like a lot going on, which is great. So let's have a look and reminder of one of the highlights of this year's Feast of Tabernacles 2022. And if you were, like Mark and Joanne, able to be part of this year's Feast of Tabernacles, you would have taken part in that wonderful march of love and solidarity to Israel and the Jewish people, walking down those holy streets of Jerusalem. Mark, you were there, so share with us a little bit what this year's Feast of Tabernacles was like, what it was like to be amongst so many Christians from all over the world that love Israel and want to show their love and appreciation for Israel and the Jewish people.
Well, Simon, first of all, what a joy to be back in the land. During those sort of COVID years, in fact, in 2020, we were building up to the 40th celebration continuously for 40 years. We had been celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles. And then, of course, COVID came and the rest is history. So what a joy to be back in the land and to be celebrating the feast. That alone in itself was worth the trip. But of course, for me, the Parade of Nations is always a standout moment because it's so prophetic. It's so significant. When you read that text in Zechariah 14:16, where it talks about the nations coming up year by year to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, this is what inspired Christian leaders way back in the late 70s to actually start this. And to me, it's one of the highlights to see the nations come up. And this year there were sort of 60, 70 nations represented, and marvelous to see them waving their flags and just, celebrating and presenting themselves before the Lord. One of the moments that brought tears to my eyes, and it doesn't take a lot to do that, but I was deeply moved by the singing of Siegfried Fitz, the German songwriter, who put music to the words of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, In German, it's called Von guten Machten wunderbar geborgen. And it literally means this: surrounded by such true and gentle powers, so wondrously consoled and without fear. And when you think that this was written shortly before Dietrich Bonhoeffer was executed by Hitler, in the sort of concentration camps, what a wonderful statement of faith and courage in the face of tyranny. Now, one of the other events that so many were blessed in was the day of prayer for the nations, a whole day of praying. In fact, in some cases, it started even before the official start. Guys were up in the prayer tower and praying for the nations. And through the course of the day, different groups came from different parts of the world and prayed for their countries and prayed for God's blessing on Israel. Of course, you've just shown the video of the Jerusalem march. And if you were to say, is there one moment that really captures the heart of what the feast is all about, I would say the Jerusalem march is it. When we walk through the streets, coming from all the different nations, and we just seek to love and bless and encourage the Israeli people. And to me, that's always just such a wonderful thing, to see the dancing, to see the joy, to see the colors, to see the flag, and just to let Israel know they are not alone, and that there are literally millions of Christians around the world who pray for them, who love them, and who stand with them. So there you are, just a few of my personal reflections on this year's feast.
Appreciate that. There's nothing like being there. That's why a first-hand account of what it's like to be at the Feast of Tabernacles is always great, Mark. So very much appreciated. And we got our final video to show you tonight, and that is with member of Knesset. Her name is Sharon Haskel, talking about Jewish Christian cooperation and why Christian evangelical support for the state of Israel is so important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, and welcome to Jerusalem. Good evening and Chag Sameach. It is so wonderful to see you all here gathered in Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. Thank you to Dr. Jorgen Buller, President of the ICEJ, for hosting this incredible event. It is an integral part of the culture of Jerusalem, and it was sorely missed over the last few years during the pandemic. It is an honor for me to be here tonight, together with former Chief Justice of South Africa, Mogoeng, with members of parliament from around the world and Christian leaders from around the world. The range of countries represented here is a testament to the strength of the ICEJ's network, as well as to the unwavering support we receive from Bible-believing Christians. Thank you. As the chair of the Knesset Christian Ally Caucus, I know that the support we receive from our Christian friends around the world is critical to our success and safety here in Israel. The prophet Zechariah spoke of a future time when all the nations would come to Jerusalem to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. Look around you now. We are the living proof of the accuracy of the Bible and the truth of the Word of God. The modern state of Israel recognized the importance of Jerusalem to people of all faith, and after liberating Jerusalem, allowed for freedom of worship for all. Unfortunately, today, Jews are still not allowed to pray at the Temple Mount, the most sacred place for Jews, And we look forward to the day when the status quo at the Temple Mount will be in line with the words of the prophet and the democratic nature of the state of Israel, allowing for all of us together to pray there. Since the time of Abraham, the Jewish people have been committed to living a life of charity and justice in the land which God designated for them, to be a light unto the nations and make an impact on the greater world. Since day one, there have been enemies of the Jewish people who have tried to erase our nation, to deny our homeland and our right to exist here in Israel. Today, with the flourishing and modern state of Israel, we have shown that we still heed to the vision of our forefather. We have created the only democracy in the Middle East, a shining light in a very dark and dangerous region. We have used this blessing to not only develop the homeland of the Jewish people, but also a safe haven for the minorities who live among us. To promote and share values of freedom and equality. The most persecuted minority in the Middle East are Christians, but within the state of Israel, they are protected and cherished citizens. It is easy to take this for granted from places where we come from. But the scenes from the last few days in Iran reminds us how lucky we are to be living in a full democracy which provide religious freedom and equal rights for all, especially for women. The scenes of women and children taking to the street, risking their lives to demand their freedom are heart-wrenching. Over 19 children have been murdered and hundreds more. Those legitimate protests where they're asking for freedom of worship, for the right to decide for themselves which opinion to believe and how to live their life. There are not enough words to describe the respect I have for these women and girls who are risking their lives to demand freedom and secure future for themselves and their children. They are the ones who are leading those demonstrations. I want to take advantage of this stage to share this message with you because you, as members of parliaments, ministers, and Christian leaders and believers from countries all over the world, have the influence over millions of people across the globe. I would like to ask you to demand and ask from your governments and your elected official to stand by the Iranian people at this time, to support their very important protests and to help them attain the freedom which they so deserve. Demand that your countries impose sanctions on the leaders of Iran, the dictators who led it to regional war and who murdered and abused their citizens. As a former combat fighter in the Israeli Defense Forces, I salute and stand by and publicly support the brave Iranian women and children who are leading the protest while risking their lives. They are fighting for their home and their future with extraordinary courage. 22-year-old Mahsa Amini has already lost her life, and at least 185 people, including 19 children, have been killed in the subsequent protests. How long will it take for the world to step in and truly make a difference? The answer depends on some of the people in here today. Let us all make sure that Mahsa Amini's death will not be in vain. We must channel our Judeo-Christian values of justice, morality, and righteousness into a global voice standing for women's right, for life, and for freedom for all. in the light of these protests, I would like to join them in a global movement, Jing Jian Asadi, Women, Life, Freedom. May next year in the Feast of Tabernacles, we will have here women representatives from Iran as well. Chag Sameach, and thank you all. Thank you.
And she's a remarkable politician. And I think when I interviewed her back in 2009, this is Sharon Haskel, she was the youngest member of Knesset and the only politician I've ever interviewed who wore Converse trainers when I interviewed her. And she is a wonderful spokeswoman for Israel, and so great that she could address those who attended the ICEJ's Feast of Tabernacles. Mark, would you just kindly read out our special guest for tonight, David Mencer's impressive biography?
So, David, this is where we try to make you blush a bit. And so David is a communications and fundraising specialist who grew up in the Jewish community in North London. He was the former UK Labour Friends of Israel director. He managed and developed the largest foreign policy pro-peace lobbying organization in the Labour Party. As director, he led over 70 MPs and ministers across the Middle East over a 6-year period to educate and promote a better understanding about the complexities of the region. He lobbied in Parliament and Brussels using all political tools, supported the Prime Minister, Chancellor, Foreign Secretary, Cabinet, and other ministers on various subjects. David moved to Israel in 2017 when Jeremy Corbyn became Labour leader. Of course, that begs a question, David, which I won't ask. In Israel, he was at the Perez Center for Peace and Innovation and is currently Senior International Connector for HonestReporting.com.
So, David, it's an absolute pleasure that you're a special guest for the month of November on Jerusalem Dispatch ICJ UK Zoom event. And personally, I'd like to thank you for your friendship. I've known you over the years, and I knew you're a fantastic guest to interview. But one thing I like about you the most, though, is the way that you've responded to evangelical support for Israel and the Jewish community. And you took that brave decision back in 2017 to make Aliyah to Israel with your family. So pleased that you are now in the promised land and you're living the Zionist dream. And thank you for the work that you do in defending Israel through honest reporting.
That's very kind of you, Simon and Mark. It is such a thrill for me personally to experience the love which Christians have for Israel. It surprises me every time I encounter it. It is such a pleasure. It is such a joy. And the first time, Simon, that I really understood it was when I met you. And I understood that the word of the Lord was firmly placed in your heart. And your love of Israel was so clearly expressed to me that it has impressed me ever since. You know, the Jewish people and the Christian people haven't always had a wonderful history. In fact, they've had a very, very difficult history, something which we've grown up with as Jewish people and we've understood so well. So it is so gratifying to have emerged from a situation where the Jewish people always felt so alone in the world. They always felt so unloved in the world. Of course, during just before the Second World War, they had literally nowhere to go when they were trying to run away from fascism and the Nazis, and to no longer be in that situation, to experience the love of Christians around the world is the most wonderful, wonderful thing, and it fills my heart with joy. So thank you very, very much for having me. We at Honest Reporting are very, very, see our friends in the Christian community as absolutely crucial in the battle, in the media battlefield, which we're fighting, which is so prevalent these days. So it's a real joy to be here with you here today.
And David, can you just share with us your family history, something about your Jewish family and growing up in North London, and North London was your home with the most of the UK Jewish community. So share with us your historical family history, as it were.
Yes, of course. I grew up in a traditional Jewish household. Traditional in one sense, but also untraditional in another sense, because my mother was from North Africa, French-speaking North Africa, from Morocco, and my father was from from Eastern Europe, and so that was already a strange combination. Both Jewish, of course. So I grew up in Britain. Britain was the country which provided refuge for so many Jewish people after the war, and my parents built a wonderful life for us in northwest London. I was, of course, British in every sense of the word, and it was a real thrill for me personally to go and work in Parliament, in the UK Parliament in Westminster, and also to become an elected councillor in the London Borough of Barnet. So British in every sense of the word, but also very strongly Jewish as well, very much aware of our background, of the struggles which our parents had gone through, running away, escaping from the Nazis and from anti-Semitism in North Africa, which unfortunately was so prevalent, but feeling very, very lucky to have found a home in the UK. So very much a British Jew, I think I would put it that way. Someone that was
Excellent.
British in every sense of the word, but very much Jewish as well.
So David, share with us where your passion for politics came from, and why you wanted to pursue a career in politics and working for a number of different prominent Labour members of Parliament. And we can see really since that you are no longer the director of Labour Friends of Israel, the Labour Party has dramatically gone downhill since. So we can definitely see that your influence over the party is a big loss, that's for sure.
Well, politics for me has always been more about the personalities involved in politics rather than the policies and the ideology themselves. And what's really fascinated me through the years is the fact that really it's about interaction between people and your relationship with people more than ideology. That's the bit which has fascinated me. Look, I've got the political bug. What can I tell you? I'm a political junkie. I have been for many, many years. And it's never left me. That means that I'm always obsessed with the news, very much aware of what's going on in the international headlines, but also in Britain and, of course, here in Israel. So politics has been very much a part of me since, in school and beyond. I was very much taken by Tony Blair and his new Labour project, revitalizing the Labour Party. I saw very much shared values between the British Jewish community and the Labour Party. But of course, these days, I am strictly apolitical. So, Mark, you are tempting me to asking me what I thought right now. I'm strictly apolitical these days, both in Israel and in the UK. But of course, I understand the policies and the drivers which drive the different political viewpoints in both countries.
And David, what do you say was one of your highlights when you were director of Labour Friends of Israel? We read out the fact you took 70 Labour members of Parliament out to Israel. I know that you've involved in writing speeches for Gordon Brown and others. But what were some of your highlights of that very important role that you undertook as being the director for Labour Friends of Israel?
Well, Simon, I think you hit the nail right on the head. There is no education like experience, and the simple joy of bringing British members of Parliament who more often than not had not visited Israel before, whose only understanding of Israel was from the unfortunately biased coverage which they get so often in the British media and on television to actually bring those people into Israel, for them to understand the country, to feel the small size of the country. You know, Israel's only the size of Wales, as you know, relatively small population in Israel, only 9 or so million people living in Israel, which is the same size as London. And of course, as you said, living in a very, very tough neighborhood. The only democracy in hundreds of miles in either direction. The only place actually again within hundreds of miles in any direction where a Christian is free to practice their own religion in the Middle East. It's only when you actually visit Israel, it's only when you see the youth of the soldiers, it's only when you see the vitality of the people, the can-do attitude of the people. It is no surprise that there are more startups per capita in Israel than in any other country in the world. A country with almost no natural resources except for maybe the brain power of its people. And of course, we just discovered some natural gas in the sea off the coast of Israel. But that is only just now having an effect. So it's only when you see these things for yourself, when you see the miracle, which is Israel, when you see the contribution which Israel has made to the entire world, whether it's through drip irrigation, whether it's through solar panels, whether it's through inventing the USB memory stick, whether it's all the innovations of creativity in desalination, in high tech and creativity. It's only when you see the country for yourself that you really get an understanding of what a special place it is. So that's why I've always been a huge advocate of bringing as many people over to Israel as I possibly can. And I would encourage all of your listeners, if you haven't been yet, you must come. You must come and appreciate. And I would recommend one of Simon and Mark's visits. I was lucky enough to join them, and they are an absolute revelation, can I say? They are very, very well organized, and they are a wonderful, wonderful visit. So it is, of course, bringing people to the region is certainly the highlight of my career so far.
Amazing. Yeah, there's nothing like being in the land and seeing it for yourself. And David, just share with us the heartbreaking moment for you when you tore up your membership of the Labour Party, which you've been a lifelong member of the Labour Party because Jeremy Corbyn became its leader, and how you and your family made that tough decision that a lot of Jewish families were thinking at that time, particularly in the UK, about making Aliyah and making a new life for yourself in the Promised Land.
Yes, Simon, I was a member of the Labour Party for more than 20 years, an active member. I was a campaigner for the Labour Party. I was an elected councillor. I had advised the leaders of the Labour Party how to connect with their Jewish communities and their constituencies across the country, and how to improve their relationships with the State of Israel. And I was delighted to do that because I very much saw the shared values between the Jewish community and the Labour Party. Unfortunately, after Gordon Brown was no longer Prime Minister, the party moved into a different direction, and with each passing year, the chasm between the Jewish community and the Labour Party grew and grew and grew until it turned into open hostility. And when Jeremy Corbyn was elected, the key point for me was when I shared with my fellow members of the Labour Party, people who I saw as my gang in the Labour Party, people who shared the same values, who I'd worked with so long to try and get Labour elected in the country. When I shared with them who Jeremy Corbyn is, who he was, the sort of things he believes in, the hostility, the thinly veiled hostility he has towards the Jewish community and Israel, the blatant anti-Semitism that he has displayed so many times, the fact that he lays wreaths at the graves of terrorists and murderers of Jews, Jewish athletes. When I shared that with them, I expected horror and an understanding of my position and why I was so much against him, but I didn't get that, unfortunately. I got complacency. I thought what they said to me was, well, he doesn't really mean that, and that's not, he's just a cuddly grandpa type figure. And for me, that was once he was elected, I knew that I could no longer feel comfortable in Britain, and it was more than that. As time went on, and he was the Labour leader. He went on for, I think, for 5 years or more than 5 years. I couldn't understand how the British body politic was not vomiting this anti-Semite out. How the British body politic, which I had admired and worked in for so many years, was not expelling this abomination from their midst. But they didn't do that, and he stayed there for a long time. And that was, I thought to myself, it's now or never. And thank God, whereas in my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, there was not a homeland for the Jewish people, a safe place in the world where Jewish people can go to and call their home. The famous definition of home by an American poet whose name escapes me is the place when you go there, they can't chuck you out. And Israel, for me, is that place, a homeland for the Jewish people and other people that live there. And I decided, my wife agreed, and we decided to move our 3 children and pack up in London and move to Israel. And it's been 5 years now, 5 all, it's coming up to 6 years. And thank God, he has blessed us in this land, and we have not regretted it, not even for a millisecond, because it is the most wonderful, energizing place. And I grew up learning from scriptures that the eye of the Lord is always on this place. Well, believe me, I feel that every moment of the day in this country, and it is the most wonderful place to live for me and my family, and it's the most wonderful thing to experience.
Amazing, David. Really, really pleased that making Aliyah has really worked out for you and your family. Well, it should do, really. You're living in the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. So David, share with us what you're doing now through honest reporting and the mandate for honest reporting in countering the lies and the bias in our international media when it comes to their coverage of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Well, Christian lovers of Israel are absolutely our key partners at Honest Reporting, because the role of Honest Reporting is to be a watchdog on the international media to check for bias against Israel. And that is not only important for Jewish people, of course it's important for Jewish people, but it's important for lovers of Israel, whatever your faith. We've been around for about 22 years now. We've certainly stood the test of time. Unfortunately, the need for oversight on the international media and social media, importantly as well, on hostility and blatant lies against and hostility towards Israel is growing all the time. We have a team of about 20, and our role is to check the international media every day, particularly the English-speaking media. We engage with journalists if they've written something which is incorrect. We engage with them. Firstly, behind the scenes, we ask them to correct their piece, and if they don't do that, then we always say that the daylight is the best disinfectant, and we expose them. And you can be sure that a little bit like actors and politicians, journalists are extremely precious about their reputation. And our role is to keep their feet to the fire, to make sure that they report Israel accurately. And that's certainly what we do.
Excellent. Now turning our attentions to the Israeli elections, when the Israeli electorate went to the polls for, I think, the 5th time in less than 4 years, to trying to bring about a strong and stable government, voted overwhelmingly for Benjamin Netanyahu. Has been out of power for 18 months. So what are your thoughts and reflections upon Israel's last general election that took place a couple of weeks ago?
Well, of course, again, I'm strictly apolitical, although obviously I did vote and took great pleasure in doing so. Look, I think the overwhelming emotion right now is relief, because this cycle of so many elections in such a short period of time, while on the one hand, it was the way that elections happen in Israel, different to the UK, is that it's a non-working day. It's like a bank holiday here in Israel. So you don't work on election days. So for my wife and my kids, it is a wonderful break every 6 months or so to have a day off work and to spend the 20 minutes voting, but enjoying the rest of the day. So on the one hand, that was a good thing, but it was disconcerting for the Israeli body politic. It did have an effect on the way which the country was run. There was a lack of stability, a lot of uncertainty, an inability of the country to develop a budget. So I think the overwhelming emotion right now is that the Prime Minister designate Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi as he's commonly known here, is able to form a stable government. So first things first, it's relief that we are hopefully moving out of this cycle of so many elections, and that we can move forward. Better for worse, we can move forward. I think that's the first emotion I have.
And David, as a keen political animal, can you just share with us what the main themes or what the main political topics were for this year's general election in Israel?
Well, the security of the state of Israel is, of course, the key factor in all decisions made in the country. Because we live in a dangerous neighborhood here, where terrorism can strike at any moment, attacks from not only from terrorists but from other countries as well is always a fear of ours. So security is always a big issue. But for this election in particular, it was internal security, which was the biggest problem. The war in 2021 against Hamas in Gaza had produced a lot of internal insecurity, I would say, in Israel. And I think what Israelis voted for first and foremost was their own personal security. That was the biggest issue, closely followed by the threat of terrorism. It is ever present here, but unfortunately we have experienced a peak in those terrorist attacks, whether on the streets of Jerusalem in the Old City, tragic stabbing attacks, or whether it's gunmen on the streets of Tel Aviv, which strike fear into the people here on an innocent evening out with their friends and their families. Those are the issues which have really occupied the mind of Israelis, which is why they have put that issue front and foremost. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he has always portrayed himself as Mr. Security, as putting these aspects as front and center of his political agenda. And I think that's why, returning a sense of stability to the country, getting out of this endless election cycle, but more importantly, this fight against terror and personal security, I think, was the key issue which encouraged Israelis to vote more to the right than to the left.
Excellent. And we have to really discuss Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi, as you say, the Israelis love to refer to him as probably the most successful Israeli politician of his time, the longest serving ever prime minister in Israel's history. The opposition that he faced was quite incredible, wasn't it? I mean, firstly, you had detractors in his own party, in his own governments that he won previous elections but couldn't form a government because they didn't want to work with him. Then we had the prosecutions against him in Israel's Supreme Court on the corruption charges, then followed by the incredible hostility shown by the Israeli media towards him. And yet all of this, and being in opposition, being able to come back after 18 months and then return as Israel's prime minister is nothing less than an incredible comeback. So what is it about Bibi that makes him such a political mastermind that he can outmaneuver his opponents and win a huge election victory like he did on the 1st of November?
You underestimate Bibi at your peril. He is, again, I'm remaining strictly apolitical, but from an impartial point of view, he is a campaigner extraordinaire. He is simply head and shoulders above his competitors by a country mile. He is a phenomenal communicator. He is able to encapsulate a situation brilliantly, not only in English, as he does so effectively in the international media in English, but in Hebrew as well. And that is a key point about him, which none of his competitors have even come close to. So first and foremost, a phenomenal campaigner and a phenomenal communicator. And no matter what they have thrown at him, and believe me, they have thrown at him everything that they possibly can in terms of corruption charges, in terms of all sorts of other allegations against him. Once again, the people, the majority of the people have voted for parties which want him as prime minister. So the people have spoken. This is the will of the people, and he now has the task of creating this stable government, and we'll see exactly what that government looks like. It's a tough job. It's a very, very tough job to be Prime Minister of Israel. One often wonders, why would you want that sort of responsibility? But you know, there's a reason why he has that staying power. It's because he has phenomenal ability. You underestimate it at your risk. You know, Israeli politics is littered with used up, spent politicians that have tried to come up against him and have failed miserably. Yet he continues to survive and thrive and doesn't look like his 73 years old that he is. And the people have spoken. There we go.
Excellent. Well, appreciate that. And also, David, can you just share with us, it was such a big election success for the religious parties like the Shas Party, the United Torah Judaism Party, the religious Zionist Party. Can you share why these religious parties did so well at this election, and how they've been able to get behind Benjamin Netanyahu to form this new religious right-wing bloc?
Well, the commentators in Israel say something quite interesting. They say to themselves, what was Bibi's plan while he was in opposition? He actually wanted Lapid to form the government. He actually wanted he wanted that government to be formed because he knew that they would have to rely on Ram, the Muslim Brotherhood party, to bring it into the coalition. And now that had a galvanizing effect on people on the right side of the political spectrum, which meant that when election day came round, we had a pretty high turnout. Now you would think after 4 or 5 elections, turnout would be low, but it went up. It went up because the makeup of the previous government, or the outgoing government, energized, I think, the right in Israeli politics. And of course, you cannot overlook the fact that the Israeli government was led by a man who essentially betrayed his own voters. He essentially betrayed his own voters by saying that he would never join a left-of-center government. And of course, he did join a left-of-center government. And I'm talking, of course, about Naftali Bennett. And so that also energized the right wing, the base and the right wing, to come out and vote. So that key, I don't think the people of Israel have changed so much. I think that they this act by Naftali Bennett, for good or for bad, or rightly or wrongly, whatever his motives were, energized the right wing of the Israeli electorate to say, hey, we voted for Naftali Bennett to keep going on right-wing policies, and here he is joining a left-of-center government. So that energized them to come out and vote for even more right-wing parties. I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, you're talking about turnout. I think the turnout was something like over 87% of the Israeli electorate, which is incredibly high. When we look at kind of British elections or American elections, somewhere in a region of 40%. So massive, massive turnout. But why was it such a failure for the left-wing parties, particularly for Meretz, who didn't even get a seat, the Labour Party that produced prime ministers like Israel's founding prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, Levi Eshkol, the likes of Itzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, and also Golda Meir did badly in this election. Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz didn't do very well either, and there was a 20-seat gap between the left and the right in this election. So why didn't the left's messages go down with the electorate, and why were the reasons why the Israeli electorate on the whole rejected the left?
Again, it was about security. It was about an uptick in terrorism on the streets of Israel, on the towns and villages of Israel, on stabbing attacks, on knifing attacks, on shootings on the streets, which made Israelis feel tremendously insecure. I think that Israelis have peace in their heart. It's hardwired into their DNA. It's the very center of the Jewish culture, peace. Of course, the greeting every day when you meet someone in the street is shalom, which of course means peace. It is, of course, God's name himself is shalom. So peace is very much part of the Jewish DNA. But the left-wing parties, who really in this election didn't talk much about the peace process at all, they made a couple of mistakes. They've been widely publicized now. Merav Michaeli, the leader of the Labour Party, who took the Labour Party from very bad results to a little bit better. There is talk, of course, that she should have merged with the Meretz party. She decided not to do that, to both of them to keep their own separate identities, and that cost them a few seats. But more than anything, it was the Palestinian Authority's encouragement of terror on the streets of Israel. It's pay for slay policy, that if you kill a Jew or an Israeli, then you will get rewarded, you will get a pension for you and your family for the rest of your life. The fact that the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately, to this day, still glorifies terror attacks, still encourages Jew hatred in the schools of the Palestinian Authority, still will not accept a peace deal, which they have been offered so many times in the past. Those, once again, are the reasons why the Israeli electorate have turned away from the left and are sort of, such large numbers have turned out in the right. It's that rejection of peace from the Palestinian Authority. It's encouragement of terror. It's blatant encouragement of terror, which have caused them to once again go for who's the man known as Mr. Security, Bibi.
And David, what are the foreign policy objectives, and how different will it be with Netanyahu back in the realms of power of Israeli politics? How will this affect America's relations with her greatest partner, the United States, with Biden in the White House? What would this mean for Iran's ambitions to acquire nuclear weapons, and the Americans wanting to have an insane Iran deal that would effectively give the Iranians billions in sanctions relief? They'd only have to wait a couple of years and they have nuclear weapons, and other issues such as this one. And of course, the Abraham Accords as well.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu, who did so well with the Abraham Accords, was the creator of the Abraham Accords. His ideology, which he shared with the Israeli electorate, was very clearly peace through strength. The older ideology was we need to make as many concessions and eventually the Palestinians will come on side. Well, Netanyahu's rationale was, look, we've tried that many, many times, and they reject peace process after peace process after peace plan after peace plan. The multitude of peace plans that have been presented towards the Palestinian Authority are always rejected by the Palestinian Authority. And his idea of peace through strength, of developing peace agreements with the surrounding nations, not only Egypt and Jordan, which we've had for quite a few years, but now going across to the UAE, a very important partner now for Israel, to Morocco and other countries as well. I think you'll see that extended now by Netanyahu. He will very much want to extend that. And of course, the bipartisan approach to relationships with the US, Netanyahu is always keen on reminding people that although he did stand up to Obama, famously addressing Congress in his, in the way that he did, which many people advised him against, he does still maintain that the importance of the bipartisan relationship with the US. And I think, he has known Biden for many, many years. They've known each other for very, very many years, and they'll be looking to maintain that relationship. Now, no doubt it's going to be strange. There'll be some tussles along the way, but I think ultimately that security relationship between the two countries will maintain with Bibi as the Prime Minister.
Excellent. So I've got two very quick questions for you, if
Sure.
that's okay, David. But for our viewers watching this Zoom event tonight, please feel free to put your question to David. So two quick questions. Firstly, what are your thoughts on our former Prime Minister Liz Truss consultation that she was thinking about moving the British embassy from Herzliya in Israel to Jerusalem, and now we have Rishi Sunak as our Prime Minister who shelved that idea. What are your thoughts on that? And also, what are your thoughts on the role that Christian evangelicals can play today in standing with Israel and the Jewish people?
Well, first thing on Liz Truss, this idea of moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem got Brits in Israel and the wider community in Israel got us quite excited, quite energized, and we were very much looking forward to it. My reading of it is for Rishi Sunak moving away from that idea is that the Foreign Office seemed to have perhaps had their effect on Rishi Sunak. He does have quite a difficult in-tray right now in Britain. As someone that is very much watching British politics day by day, he's got quite a tough in-tray to deal with, and maybe this was a bridge too far for him. Maybe this was something he didn't need to deal with. On the question of, so it's disappointing, of course, but we have faith in the good Lord. And he runs the world, not Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss. And so we hope for the future. On the role of Christians, look, Christians, supporters of Israel, have been absolutely key to the creation of Israel through the Balfour Declaration, through Lord Balfour, through Lloyd George, through to Churchill himself. Lovers of Israel in the Christian community have been absolutely key to the establishment of the state of Israel and the maintenance and the growth of the state of Israel. Jewish people have long memories. The famous story is told about Napoleon, who went out into the streets of Paris around the time of the 9th of Av, the Jewish month of Av, Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. And he went past a Jewish synagogue and he saw some Jewish children sitting outside crying, sitting on the floor and crying. And he asked them, "What are you crying about? What are you crying about?" And they said that we are crying about the destruction of our temple in Jerusalem. And Napoleon asked the kids, when did this happen? Last week, 10 years ago, 5 years ago? He said, no. The kids said, no, it happened 2,000 years ago. And he, of course, famously said that any people that still cries over something which they lost 2,000 years ago will no doubt merit to see the rebuilding of that temple speedily in our days. Amen. Christians have been side by side with the Jewish people in the development of Israel. I cannot forget the famous opening of the US embassy in Jerusalem, when amongst all the dignitaries there, of course, Pastor Hagee was prominent, front and center in that ceremony. I will never ever forget that. Now, all of the nations that have moved their embassies to Israel, it is because of the Christian love for Israel. It is because the Christian communities, first and foremost through their prayers, the power of their prayers, but also because of their electoral power as well, and the pressure and the advocacy which they have placed and which they have helped encourage their governments to move their embassies. First and foremost through Donald Trump, of course, who made the bold step to move the embassy. So the Christian communities are absolutely key, and we at Honest Reporting recognize this and revel in this and celebrate this, because the Christians who love Israel are absolutely key partners, especially now, especially right now when Israel is facing hostility in international media and international press, saying all sorts of maligning Israel because of the makeup, the likely makeup of his new government. We need our Christian brothers and sisters more than ever. Get involved, get engaged, educate yourself. Of course you must pray. Of course you must pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but also you must engage yourself in the work of organizations like our own, like Honest Reporting. Sign up for our briefings, write to your members of parliament. Most importantly, challenge the media. When you see bias in the media, let us know. Don't turn the page. Don't move on to the next article. We certainly do not. We need you, our Christian brothers and sisters, as our partners in this battle to enhance and maintain and to grow this special place, this homeland for the Jewish people here in the Middle East. So that's my message to Christians around the world listening to us right now.
Fabulous. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having a few technical problems. My camera's just gone, but hopefully you can hear my voice. I just want to thank you so much, David, for joining us tonight. We know it's late in Israel and really appreciate you giving us this wonderful overview of Israeli politics, but also the important job that we as Christians got to do, and that's stand with Israel and the Jewish people in love and increase our activism and our support for Israel. I'm just going to hand over to Mark for his closing remarks and also thoughts on tonight's special Zoom event with you tonight.
David, it's been lovely having you with us tonight, and just to be able to get your perspective on the political processes and things that are happening. And of course, our perspective as a ministry is that we are biblical Zionists. We're not political Zionists. So like you, we're not supporting one party or another, but we fundamentally believe in the promise of God's word that said that he would bring the Jewish people back to their land. And I'm reminded of that passage in Genesis 12, where God tells Abraham to look to the north, to the south, and says, this land I have given to you. And of course, earlier in the chapter, he says this, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And we make a choice as individuals, as churches, as communities, to be on the side of God and to bless the nation of Israel. So thank you so much. And for all of you that have joined us tonight, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at some of our ICEJ events, at the prayer event, the Isaiah 19. And of course, we'd love to take you to Israel and for you to come and be with us at next year's feast. So David, let me close in prayer, and then we'll bring tonight to a close. Father, thank you for this time. We ask your blessing upon David and his family and upon this ministry of honest reporting. We pray that you'll encourage them, resource them, give them all that they need in order to be a voice of balance and truth. And we thank you for our time together in the name of Jesus, our Messiah. Amen. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to join you. An honor indeed, an honor. Thank you.
Catch the wind, he's carrying you.